with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, February 29th, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Carlos Rojas Rodriguez, immigrant justice organizer on the Democrats' right-wing pivot on immigration. And later in the show, Kina Collins, progressive candidate activist in the 7th District of Illinois, running for Congress. Also on the program today, the official death toll, a huge undercount, hits 30,000 in Gaza after the IDF opened fires on a crowd of starving Palestinians swarming a rare aid truck. The UN says 500,000 people in Gaza are on the brink of starvation as Israel continues to block most aid, and the US weighs dropping aid from the sky, which begs the question, maybe force Israel to let it in on the ground. The Supreme Court hands... Well, that wasn't a question. It's a demand. Should be, at least. The Supreme Court hands Trump a massive victory, agreeing to hear his bogus presidential immunity case, which would delay his federal election subversion trial potentially until after the election. As the Supreme Court weighs whether or not to keep Trump on the ballot, they will. An Illinois judge also rules to remove him from the primary ballot. Another court denies Trump's bid to delay his over $450 million civil fraud penalty. A government shutdown is averted, for now. A short-term funding bill has been agreed upon. But Mitch McConnell doesn't seem to think the prospects are pretty good, because he's announcing he will step down as Republican leader by the end of the year. The party's too extreme for Mitch McConnell now. That same party just blocked Tammy Duckworth's bill to protect IVF along Senate unanimous consent lines. Unanimous? Unanimous consent. Ununanimous? That wouldn't make any sense. And in the House, Republican Anna Luna mysteriously withdraws her co-sponsorship of the IVF protection bill. Alabama Republicans scramble to undo their state Supreme Court ruling because it's so bad politically. The IVF one. The Supreme Court appears divided on the legality of a Trump-era bump stock ban for machine guns. Meaning they could be to the right of Trump on this. Another botched execution in Idaho by lethal injection. Stay safe, Texas. The largest wildfire in the state's history has now burned over 1 million acres. And lastly, a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine finds that long COVID may lead to measurable cognitive decline. If you are 65 or older, go get your new COVID booster. You can do so now. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Leap Day. It is Leap Day. My people may be familiar with my good friend Dan from the internet. He is a Leap Day baby. I'm giving him a shout out right at the top of the show here because that's quite rare, a Leap Day baby. So he turned 7 today. Congratulations to Dan. But yeah, only comes around every 4 years. I'm a big 30 Rock fan. There's an episode called Leap Day. My controversial opinion is it's the worst episode of the show. And I say that with a heavy heart because there's really no bad episodes. There's always good, funny stuff in every 30 Rock episode. But it's just myself and Bradley today for now, before we get joined by our friends in the fun half, Matt Binder and Brandon Sutton. Matt is on his way to go to a wedding, so he will not be with us for the rest of the week, but we do have a great show for you today. Let's start here with the Trump story. The Supreme Court has announced that it will decide whether or not Donald Trump has presidential immunity from prosecution, just generally. They've decided they'll take up the case. They could have dismissed it out of hand, and that would have meant that the trial would have been on track to take place before the 2024 general election. Now, this delays it significantly because the Supreme Court will be hearing arguments the week of April 22nd. And then they'll have to make a decision probably in June. And that is exactly what Trump wanted, because that means that the judge will not be able to hold a trial in time, most likely, for the election. Now, this could potentially change, but legal experts say it would be very difficult. The earliest, it seems like a trial on this particular case, the Jack Smith federal election interference probe, the earliest it appears it could even happen would be October. So because of the circus of the election, it seems overwhelmingly likely that this will have to happen after the election. And so the fact that they're even taking this case up is a huge, huge win for Donald Trump, because the claims that he's making are so unconstitutional on their face. Like, I don't think that the Supreme Court is going to rule in his favor. This is their way to have it both ways. They can help their buddy out, the guy that put them on the Supreme Court, the party that put them on the Supreme Court, the party that they're ideologically aligned with, while at the same time not giving the president immunity from all criminal justice. It's like the most unconstitutional thing on its face. So the D.C. Circuit Court had already shut this down. Trump appealed, and the Circuit Court decision was incredibly clear. But here's Supreme Court analyst Joan Biskrebick. She reacted here on CNN to the news, the breaking news, and this was her assessment.
But the fact that they delayed even this order that basically just says we're going to take it up, that they delayed it for 2 weeks, suggests that they certainly did not embrace the urgency that Special Counsel Jack Smith tried to impose upon them way back in December, when Jack Smith went to the Supreme Court and said, Justices, please take up this case now so that we can get a clear answer. This is yours to answer. And then, once the D.C. Circuit, once the Supreme Court said, no, we're not coming in, and the D.C. Circuit ruled, that was another several weeks. So former President Trump's effort to run the clock has a partner in the Supreme Court at this point, even though, Jake, probably in the end, the justices will agree with the D.C. Circuit and reject former President Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity. But what good will that do for any kind of trial before we're really into the heat of this next presidential election?
That is quite aligned with my reading on this as well. There's been in the past not this claim of total immunity. I mean, it's not, as I said, not in the Constitution. It's just made up by Trump, just made up that he has legal immunity from criminal prosecution because he's the king. Oh, I mean the president. Oh, and apparently he's still the president even though he lost the election. Running for a third term. Shouldn't disqualify me, because they stole it from me. Isn't this your third term, Mr. President? I thought you're still the shadow guy, or I'm having trouble keeping track of the conspiracy theories, Bradley.
Well, it's kind of it's almost the parallel to sort of like the Biden crime family aspect that like Biden is like this doddering old man, but also the ringleader of a extremely intricate crime syndicate.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, it's like Trump because he was president, but also in some people's minds and maybe his own is still or should be president. He was spurned from his rightful presidency, should be immune from any potential criminal liability. But because the doddering old man crime syndicate leader is the so-called president, he needs to be punished and can't be immune from criminal prosecution.
Yes.
So it's also that's the other I think contortion that they have to do, which is that Trump desperately needs presidential immunity for some communal reason, for some countrywide national reason,
for the Constitution.
But presumably, the second he gets in office, based on every single other public statement he's ever made, he's going to prosecute all of his political rivals, including the former president, if Biden was the former president.
I'm old enough to remember lock her up.
Right.
Lock her up.
And yet presidential immunity is it's like existentially important to Trump, and also even Trump in some of his statements says like, for all presidents, not just me. Does that include Joe Biden, the guy you're very expressly like, I want to throw in jail?
Yes, it's Biden. It's anybody who opposed him. Like, I mean, he's spoken about broadly his political opponents, but even that claim, like it was, I hate immigrants, I hate Muslims, and I hate Hillary Clinton and think she's a criminal. And then, like, in the lead up to that election, Fox News was saying that even though Comey and the FBI was not going to charge her, that there was not going to be like criminal charges from the FBI or from the DOJ about this. Even with that, they said, well, she's going to obstruct further charges into her, and this is why she's such a criminal. The guy is now taking it to the Supreme Court and has stacked the Supreme Court with judges who are going to help him out. And this is the exact scenario that they claimed Hillary Clinton was going to do when she was anointed as the president in 2016, that Trump is doing in practice right now.
It's not a novel observation on my end here, but it's like if you substituted Donald Trump's name for like a more ethnic or global South sounding name,
yes,
and say this was happening in like the Central African Republic or something like that. This would just be like a little brief news chyron of like, oh, look at this hilariously corrupt thing going on in a far-flung part of the world.
Totally. Third world. What are you going to do about it, right?
Where a former president is seeking re-election, saying the election was stolen from him. He's appointed 3 Supreme Court justices to tip the scales to hopefully render him completely immune from criminal prosecution. People will just be like, yep, things are
totally.
It's destabilizing over there.
It's so corrupt over there. And then you'll have Eric Prince come on TV and say, well, we got to recolonize Africa.
Yeah,
we've got to do it. And like, this is also not a novel thing to bring up, but the Supreme Court has ruled on a similar issue before in Nixon's instance. Back in 1974, the justices, it was the Warren Court, right? So it's more liberal, but Rehnquist was on that court, a very conservative justice. It was a unanimous decision where they decided that Nixon, who was claiming that he had executive privilege, and so they should not be able to use the sensitive information, the tapes that recorded him basically, walking through the crimes that they were going to commit, that should not be allowed to be consumed or used as evidence because, or it should be confidential for national security purposes, and he said that this was covered under executive privilege. And again, as I mentioned, the court ruled unanimously against him. Oh, I should correct myself. Rehnquist actually recused himself. Sorry, correcting myself. Rehnquist did not rule in that instance, but he was still on the court, and Clarence Rehnquist recused himself because he had ties to the Nixon administration. So it actually is quite fascinating because Clarence Thomas's wife is deeply aligned with the Trump administration and the MAGA movement, and that has been delineated many times. You think Clarence Thomas is going to recuse himself? You think Clarence Thomas is going to recuse himself from this case? I think not. So, this is quite bad news. But it's not news that anyone should be surprised by. The Supreme Court is immensely important, and it's paying dividends for Trump and the Republicans that they were so aggressive, so laser focused on the judiciary, and we are facing the effects of that, and will be facing the effects of that for decades and decades to come. All right, we are going to be speaking to Carlos Rojas Rodriguez very shortly about immigration, but first, we have a word from one of our wonderful sponsors. Do you get into bed and start checking all of your social media apps, and then all of a sudden 45 minutes have passed, and you're just scrolling at nighttime, and you look at the clock and freak out because, gosh, you got to go to bed, you got to get up for work in the morning, but you're so overstimulated from your phone? Look, I'm speaking from experience here. Calm, though, can help you form new and healthy bedtime habits this year. The Calm app puts the tools that you need to feel better in your back pocket. If you go to calm.com/majority, you'll get a special offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription, and the content is added every week. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. Calm recognizes that everyone faces unique challenges in their daily lives, that mental health needs differ from person to person, and that time for meditation may vary. And since self-practices are so deeply personal, Calm strives to provide content that caters to your preferences and needs. Their meditations range from focuses on anxiety and stress, relaxation, and focus to building habits and taking care of your physical well-being. They have sleep stories with hundreds of titles to choose from, including sleep meditations and calming music that will have you drifting off to dreamland quickly and naturally. They even have expert-led talks on topics such as tips for overcoming stress and anxiety, handling grief, improving self-esteem, caring for relationships, and more. Stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. I have struggled to actually try to have discipline with meditation. Calm has helped me immensely. My fiance is just actually good at this stuff, and he was trying to teach me, and I'm like, I can't do this. I need something else. I need an app that's going to keep me on track with this. And Calm, with all of their options, really does help me out, and it makes my mind kind of just slow down and stop racing ahead. So I couldn't recommend it more highly. For listeners of the show, Calm is offering an exclusive offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/majority. Go to calm.com/majority for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/majority, calm.com/majority for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Thank you, Calm, for sponsoring this program. And we're going to take a quick break and speak with Carlos Rojas Rodriguez in a second. We are back, and we are joined now by Carlos Rojas Rodriguez, longtime immigrant justice organizer and former staffer for the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. Carlos, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So recently, the Democrats and the Biden administration backed an extremely right-wing border deal that included Ukraine and Israel aid. It was an effort to get aid to Ukraine. That's what the Democrats, I guess, specifically in the Senate, like those on the Senate Armed Services Committee and those who are more connected to, there are many Democratic senators, I would say, that think that the fight, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is existential, and sending money to Ukraine is really important. And I support sending money to Ukraine with conditions. But the Israel stuff to fund the genocide, that was also a part of it. And so, of course, there's a lot of controversy on that end. And then the Republicans in the House are not in favor of Ukraine money because they're now pro-Putin-ish. And so to get it over the hump, the Biden administration and Democrats decided we're going to go so far to the right on immigration and give the Republicans everything they want. Now, thankfully, the Republicans in the House just decided, well, we're killing this because of Ukraine aid, and the Democrats were saved here, in my opinion, from Republican extremism. But that's a brief recap of how we got to this point. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw all of that hawkish border language in the bill? And if you could explain to our audience what it looks like and what it really means.
Yeah, so we started hearing these rumors, I would say, back in October, November. And, we just couldn't believe what was being presented to us. The traditional compromise on immigration, I would say, since like the late Bush years, all of the Obama years, and right before Trump got in office, was a agreement between border security for citizenship for millions of undocumented immigrants in the United States. And I, had reservations about that deal because I don't think that we need to militarize the border. And there's a clear incentive for immigrants to arrive to this country. But, at least us who work in the immigrant rights spaces, we had something to fight for. And to go from there, to this new agreement, which is basically a wish list of Trump on immigration, including hiring more ICE and CBP agents, militarizing the border, encouraging governors like Abbott, continuing to create their own CBP and ICE agencies at the state level for funding for pointless wars, occupations, and genocide, right? And this really sent a message to us in the immigrant rights space that we're really bargaining chips in the eyes of the Democratic Party, right? I feel like we expect this kind of treatment from the Republicans who have embraced a extreme anti-immigrant narrative. But to see the Biden administration concede into that narrative and spearhead these negotiations and sending a clear message to the Democrats in Congress that this is a request from the White House has definitely set us years, if not decades back when it comes to the immigration struggle and the fight for immigrant rights.
So can you mentioned it there, if you could touch on what the shift in mindset for the Democrats has been since the Obama administration. As you say, the DREAM Act did not succeed in Congress under Obama, but there still was this messaging and this desire to protect Dreamers, and he did do some individual executive actions to protect Dreamers. This was just 10, 12 years ago at this point, but there is no effort from the Biden administration to approach this topic from that angle. How have things devolved to this point?
Well, I would even say that they've devolved to the point that we can't even recognize the president's actions and rhetoric and policies, right? So during the campaign trail in 2020, back then candidate Biden was repeatedly questioned by activists and also at debate stages by other candidates about the 3 million deportations that took place under the Obama administration, right? 3 million people that have been deported that the Obama administration promised to legalize and never happened, right? And even with those actions, at least back then, we had helpful narratives, helpful rhetoric, the embracement of the DACA program, a commitment for a pathway to citizenship. And even though there wasn't a clear path in Congress to do it, we could at least rely on a president that would say, that would have a helpful rhetoric to advance the cause for immigrant rights. Now, during the campaign trail in 2020, Biden actually apologized and said that the efforts to deport 3 million people were misguided. He made promises to end private detention, right? This is the existence of private corporations that function like hotels. They create contracts with ICE, and they basically make money by detaining undocumented immigrants, thus creating an incentive for anti-immigrant legislation at the state and local level to keep those beds full. So Biden promised to end private detention. He also promised to end cooperation between police and ICE, and ending programs like the 287G agreements, which forces local police departments to act as ICE agents at the local level, which creates distrust between, the immigrant community and law enforcement. Now, we expected, right, that come 2020, 2021, we would see a president take executive action to end 287G programs, which he can do by executive authority. We expected an announcement that would prohibit private detention centers from existing. And we have seen the complete opposite. We have seen efforts to expand Trump-era policies that he criticized, like Title 42. We have seen horrific images, right, of Haitian Black immigrants being whipped on horseback at the border. We have seen Vice President Kamala Harris, during her visit to Central America, tell people not to come to the United States without offering any solutions for these countries that have been victims, of U.S. foreign economic policies and also military policies for the last 50 years. So to arrive today, 2024, right, and hearing that President Biden is making a visit to the border today, hearing rumors that there might be announcements of policies through executive action that just cave to this anti-immigrant rhetoric that right-wing extremists in the Republican Party have created is really disheartening. It is a disappointment, and we see it as a betrayal to the promises that he made during the campaign trail.
You were, and I did not realize this, Carlos, because I remember this video quite clearly. You were one of the folks in the audience that asked Biden a question about his immigration policy, and that was the response when he said you should just vote for Trump. I remember that quite clearly in my mind because at the time, the primary was still competitive, and it was just such a shocking answer to give to somebody who was just speaking about the condition of immigrants in this country. I mean, what was that like, asking him that question? And does it surprise you that he's decided to go down this road?
Yeah, we were at a town hall in South Carolina, and we have brought parents who have had family members either detained or deported, right? And when Biden was running for president, there was a clear question in our heads. So under the Obama administration, while he sat as vice president, the second most powerful person in the country, right? He saw the Obama administration deport 3 million people. Now, we had parents engaged with Biden at a town hall, really asking whether we can trust him to be the president, knowing that when he was vice president, 3 million deportations took place. Now, he went on just sharing some basic talking points about Dreamers and DACA, but we had older people in the room. We had undocumented parents who don't qualify for DACA, who have been waiting for a pathway to citizenship for years, if not decades. And the only question that we had for him was whether he would promise to stop the mass deportation crisis. Now, I think he got very defensive. And I think that this is a rhetoric that we have seen from Democrats when it comes to many progressive issues, right? That if if you don't like the status quo and what we have to offer, then you can go ahead and support the worst of the two evils, right? So you can go ahead and support Trump. And I think that that's what he was trying to say. Well, if you don't like what I have to offer, then you can go ahead and vote for Trump, knowing that his policies would probably be worse than what we have. Now, fast forward to 2023, if I just move to the United States and I just experience immigration policy for what it is, I really can't tell you the difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, because Biden has actively expanded anti-immigrant policies from the Trump era that he promised to eradicate. We are seeing an immigration crisis that is really affecting the nation. And we're seeing Republicans use the anti-immigrant rhetoric to really energize their base. But we don't see a counterweight on the Democratic side. We just see a concession and further pushing to the right on immigration during an election year. And it is 2024. I'm really concerned about, Biden's chances for re-election. Not saying that he should be the president that we have, but when we think about Trump and Biden, clearly, when Trump was in office, the immigrant community was terrified. It was even hard to organize and mobilize people because we really thought that we were going to be rounded up by ICE. And the message that I have for Democrats, right, is that when Obama, under the pressure of undocumented youth, issued the DACA program on the summer of 2012, the summer before his presidential re-election, it made sense for immigrant rights organizations and the movement to transition from a campaign on policy and trying to really pass things to electoral cycle, right? Because we felt that we had at least won some protections for undocumented youth. Now, this year, there is no motivation, there is no incentive. I am in community meetings with directly impacted people that have campaigned for Democrats for years, and they're really asking, what are we really fighting for? It just feels like we're fighting against something, but there's nothing to fight for. And like the latest negotiations that we have seen, mixing border security with foreign aid for genocide, occupation, and pointless wars, really make it clear that we don't have a path forward on immigration. And just like many other constituencies, my fear is that, young people, immigrants, who have family members who are citizens, who have kids that have been born here, don't really have a motivation to go to the polls in November.
I know that you don't have too much time, so I wanted to ask you this before we have to say goodbye to you. What is the alternative vision for the Democrats? What could they do to differentiate their messaging? We've seen when they try to be Republican light, they just embolden Republican messaging. I mean, what's really needed is a standardized, modernized process to bring people through so they can go through the system in a humane way and have their asylum claims heard. Militarism only creates more death and insecurity for migrants that will cross anyway, but they'll be beholden to cartels, they'll be in danger for their lives. I mean, what does militarism look like, and what should the alternative path be for the Democrats? Border militarism, I mean to say.
I would say that first, the path that they should stop taking is embracing this anti-immigrant rhetoric and policies, right? When you present Biden and Trump to the general population, I would say that mostly every voter would assume that Trump would be tougher on immigration. So Biden trying to court voters, right, or putting, this supplemental bills to militarize the border, I don't really think politically creates any base of voters that would say, you know what, if my issue is border security, then I think that Biden would be better than Trump on border security, right? Trump is the person who created this narrative. So you really can't make a political case for Biden to out-Trump Trump on his own policies, right? Now, I think that we are at a point in place, and just to mention Michigan, for example, a couple of days ago, where there is an all-time high discouragement of the Democratic base or the traditional Democratic base to actually be energized to go to the polls in November. We need to offer a counter vision to what the Trump administration did during their years in office. And this, as you have highlighted, means that we really look to reduce the backlog that we have on immigration. We need judges being able to make determination on this case. We need policies that allow people to come forward, make a claim to be in this country and have the right, to a process where they're treated fairly. And we also need compassion, and we just need to remember that we all come from somewhere, that these visa quotas that we have today were a racist effort to just really limit the people that were coming from. When folks were coming from Europe, we basically had an open border policy, right? Where you just get a medical screening and that's all you need to do. But when people started coming from the global south, then all of a sudden we saw a need to restrict in immigration, and also people, I migrated myself. I'm an undocumented, I used to be an undocumented immigrant for 12 years in this country. I remember my parents going through the decision-making process, and it took us years to really land on the decision that we wanted to leave our loved ones, our community, our language. My mom was a teacher and she loved her profession. She knew that she would have to trade a dream job for probably a factory job, which she worked for nearly 20 years, and she did it because she saw no path forward for us in Peru, So what I would say is that countries in the global south need support. They need financial help, and instead of expending billions of dollars on foreign wars, occupations and genocide, we can actually support countries get back on their feet, so that next time that Kamala Harris goes to Central America, she doesn't just tell people not to go home, but actually offers solutions in the form of infrastructure programs and financial help for people that are fleeing north. Immigrants are forced to make these decisions. If we had a better quality of life in our home countries, we wouldn't be here in the first place. And just to remind viewers, some of these policies that are forced, some of the conditions that are forcing people to migrate were, initiated by the CIA, by the School of the Americas, by by supporting military dictatorships, and really also, we don't talk about free trade a lot, all of these programs like NAFTA, CAFTA, that basically create open borders for U.S. corporations to set shop anywhere in South America, Central America, and Mexico, have displaced business owners and farm workers because they have no way to compete with the infrastructure that these corporations have. So, a lot of times people tell me, do you support open borders? And I feel like that's a really unfair question when literally companies have open borders because we have created policies that allow them to go anywhere they want on Earth. We have, in the name of globalization, put poor people and working class people in conditions where they're forced to migrate. So I would just remind people that everyone who is coming here with their children, crossing Rio Grande, right, making this journey, sometimes 2,000, 3,000 miles, I would really just ask them, receive them, welcome them with love and compassion, because they are forced to be here. They really don't want to be here, until I really became Americanized. I didn't really want to live in this country because I really felt the racism as well, so that's my message.
I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's such a great point about globalization. Globalization for capital, but not for human beings. Thank you so much, Carlos Rojas Rodriguez, immigrant rights organizer, former staffer for the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be speaking to congressional candidate in Illinois, Kina Collins. We are back, and we are joined now by Kina Collins, candidate for Congress in the 7th Congressional District, longtime activist in Illinois, in Chicago. Kina, thanks so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be back.
It's good to talk to you. We were chatting about this briefly because our previous interview has a lot of resonance right now for Chicago, because Greg Abbott is posturing per usual, saying that migrants should be sent to Chicago so they can deal with them in the same way he was doing that for New York, and Ron DeSantis for Martha's Vineyard, just treating human beings as pawns in this way. As somebody who's been involved in Chicago activism and community organizing for so long, what's your reaction to some of that rhetoric and what you're seeing in the city?
I couldn't agree more that the talking point about we don't have a problem with open borders for companies that go into countries and exploit a workforce to build global economies, obviously of some of the strongest global economies that we know. And I think what's happening in Chicago is no different with that talking point. What I've been really proud about is how the community has stepped up with mutual aid efforts. And, what Greg Abbott meant for bad, the people of Chicago mean for good. And I think that we've had this moment where we've had to contend with communities that haven't had the resources, like the African African-American community, for example, who feels that, we don't have enough resources to give everybody. And what activists and organizers on the ground, have been activating community members with is that we can't move with a scarcity mindset. We have to center the voices of those who've been left behind, like the African-American community, and talk about their agenda and the things that they need. And we also have to say it's not okay for people to be sleeping on the floors in police stations, migrants and new arrivals and new Chicagoans, right? So it's been interesting to watch, but I've been very proud of community really stepping up and with open arms and welcoming new arrivals in Chicago.
Well, to get a little bit into your background in Chicago, you are running for Congress. It's the 7th congressional district in Illinois. You're up against a very, very, very long-term incumbent. I mean, how long has he been in Congress, Congressman Davis?
Over a quarter century.
Wow. Okay. And
he's been my representative since I was 5 years old.
You've challenged him before as well, right? And your first try, there was a big gap, but you closed it a lot in your second try, and now third time's the charm, hopefully, here. Talk about why, knock on wood, I just did it. Talk a little bit about why you decided to go for this for a third time.
We built the largest field apparatus that this district had seen in a generation. We out fundraised the incumbent 2-1, didn't take a dime of corporate PAC money. And anybody who knows anything about politics, you don't even have to live in Chicago. You know that the Chicago machine is unmatched. And so Congressman Davis called in all of the Democratic leadership, from our governor to the mayor. Hakeem Jeffries came and stumped in the district. Nancy Pelosi came to stump in the district. And then in the 11th hour, as those final polling numbers were coming in, Joe Biden actually endorsed in our district, which President Biden only endorsed in 3 Democratic primaries, and we were one of them last midterm. And so I think what we really showed was our organizing prowess. We showed that we were right. And to take on a stalwart like Danny Davis, who has accepted so much corporate PAC money, and say that it's time for a new breed of leadership to step up in Chicago, in the Illinois 7th, and then to lose by 1 city ward, and let the people in the city of Chicago and in the western suburbs know that we could do this. And so we're back to finish what we start, because we don't believe in abandoning the movements that we build.
What is his record? I mean, what does he stand for? I know that recently he's been one of the most absent members of Congress in terms of votes. What are his policies, and how do yours differ?
Well, what's interesting is Congressman Davis actually came in as extremely progressive. He was a lot like our campaign 40 somewhat years ago. Right. And I think that's the issue that we have both in the Democratic Party and just in the political system, is that people get into these seats and then they get complacent. And so aside from him being one of the Democrats in our delegation to miss some of the most votes of anybody in the delegation, Congressman Davis has been absent on the Israel-Gaza situation, right? The merciless bombings that have been happening against innocent Gazan people. He hasn't really stood with the community on that. He continues to take corporate PAC donations. As a matter of fact, he has accepted campaign donations from the GEO Group, which is the 2nd largest private prison contractor in the globe, right? In a plurality African-American district with a median age of 35, we are a prime targeted district for those private prison mass carceral systems to profit off of and throw into jail. And so we need somebody who's going to speak with a moral authority. I also like to talk about how Illinois 7 has the largest life expectancy gap in the nation. Between downtown Chicago, you live to the age of about 90. If you travel a 30-minute car ride to the south side of Chicago, which is also in our district, you live to the age of 60. So it's a 30-year life gap based off of a 30-minute car ride. And we want a congressperson that's not going to accept corporate PAC dollars from pharmaceutical industry and big insurance companies.
That all is definitely in keeping with progressive values, for sure. And also your background, I think, is really notable. I think I mentioned it earlier. that you have a long history of activism, the fact that you began to organizing in response to police brutality, Laquan McDonald in particular. What was your journey like in activism, and how did it get you to the point where you wanted to make change as a congresswoman?
I think this is just like a full circle moment. The district that I'm running in and the neighborhood that I live in is the same neighborhood that Chairman Fred Hampton used to organize in and was ultimately assassinated in, right? So when we talk about a class struggle, when we talk about building rainbow coalitions, and when we talk about holding accountability for major entities and institutions like the Chicago Police Department, this is in my blood. This is in my DNA. And so I think, the journey has been one where it's been an eye-opening experience. I think when you're an organizer in the city of Chicago, you get a world-class crash course in taking on some of the most corrupt politicians and some of the most corrupt policies. And so when we get to Washington, D.C., the style of governing that I will be implementing is a co-governing style. And I think that comes from that organizing background, that I'm coming as one, but I stand as 10,000, right? My community is coming with me. My community is standing as an accountability metric for us. And so when we talk about not taking corporate PAC dollars in our campaign, when we talk about grassroots organizing, when we talk about taking on stalwarts like Danny Davis, all of that comes from that accountability metric and that organizing experience that I got firsthand on the front lines of those protests and in public policy rooms.
What are some of the other areas of passion for you as a candidate? For example, public schools, gun violence. I know that has been part of what you've advocated for in the past. How would that translate, and how does that, I guess, translate to your platform as a candidate?
Yeah, public safety is often the number one issue on polls for a lot of voters. And, gun violence prevention is my number one issue. As a child, I actually witnessed another young person gunned down in my community, and I knew the victim and I knew the shooter, and it changed the entire trajectory of my life. And what I also knew was that the bullet was flying long before anybody pulled the trigger, right? When we shut down public schools, when we gut wraparound services and mental health in communities, when we don't build strong local economies for people, all of that is structural violence, and it's the bullet flying. And so I've went from being a survivor of gun violence, a public policy expert, on to even being tapped by the Biden administration to advise their senior policy advisors on common sense gun safety legislation. And so all of it has really been tied in telling that story to voters, that over policing our communities are not going to be the ways that we keep each other safe. We keep each other safe, right? And so we have to strike at the root causes of what causes that. And violence, at least in our district and really all across this country, the root cause is poverty. And you're not going to be able to police poverty away. And so having that voice as a survivor, as a public policy expert, I think has really captivated voters in the district and brought them our way. The final thing I'll say is I'm really, really passionate about universal health care, specifically single payer Medicare for all. Before running for office, I worked for Physicians for a National Health Program, where I turned actual doctors into activists fighting for a single payer Medicare for all healthcare system in the country. And that's going to be one of my top issues and priorities when I get to Congress.
And can you also differentiate yourself, because you're not the only candidate running in this race in the primary, but clearly you are the one who's gotten the closest to toppling the incumbent. So, I mean, what is the status of your race with some of the other candidates running in the primary?
I think it's all eyes on us on election night. And this is a time for the progressives to shine. This is why it's important to come on shows like this one and tell progressives across the country to get on board and help us in these last few weeks leading into the election cycle. We lost our race by 4,600 votes. That is a field margin. Wow. That means that a handful of precincts was the difference between us electing somebody who has been there for over 2 decades, going on 3 decades, and somebody who is hungry and ready to really fight for the people, and who's been on the front lines in these last, in this last decade of this progressive fight. And so I think the Chicago media, we really made people respect the progressive movement in this district. We really made people respect underdog candidates in this race. And this is going to be the most competitive primary in Illinois on election night. And so, I'm just calling on, if you believe in these same values, help us in these last few weeks get across the finish line.
Has Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, weighed in on this race? And what's your relationship with him? Because that was a fairly exciting victory for folks who were invested in, like I'm in Brooklyn right now, and our mayor is a right-wing cop. So Brandon Johnson looks like just a much better option. What has his reaction been to your race, and has he weighed in?
So the mayor has not officially weighed into the race. Brandon was my commissioner before he became the mayor. So me and Brandon have a really good relationship. We were close before he became mayor. The mayor he's working on a lot of things. And so in the city of Chicago, and it's been a steep learning curve for him. And he's getting his footing, and he's had some great progressive victories under his belt in the short period that he's been in. But there's also a lot of things that he's working on that I think has taken his attention. I don't know if the mayor will weigh in on this race. But what I will say is we're not just leaning on endorsements to win this election. When we ran last time and almost won this seat, we probably had 2, maybe 3 elected officials that endorsed us, right? We came into this election cycle with over 20 elected officials across the district who have endorsed this campaign, over 15 community organizations, right? So we have united the progressive space in this district, and they're behind and united behind our campaign. And that's what we're looking forward to. The only endorsement I'm looking forward to is the voters in this district.
I got you. Wrapping up here, but how many times have people compared your campaign to Cori Bush's, in the sense that both community organizers, both of you are activists that came out of kind of police brutality opposition? Also, Cori Bush ran against the incumbent, lost before, and then came around and ended up winning. Do you see inspiration in her campaign?
I love Representative Bush, and she's really been such a source of wisdom for me. I personally, obviously, I was endorsed by the Justice Democrats in the previous election cycle. So obviously, Cori is a part of that political family. And the Sunday after I lost, Cori gave me a call in the true fashion of a pastor, right? She's a minister. So she gave me a call, and I basically told Cori, like, I don't think, I could do this again. And Cori, just gave me words of encouragement and told me her story about how she had to run 3 times, before she got into Congress, and to really just keep my head up. And so I've been really encouraged by Cori Bush. I've been seeing how she's been standing strong for the Palestinian people against all adversity. And I think that strong moral compass is something that not even candidates and electeds, but just like organizers and people in the community should be very proud of. So I'm looking forward to joining Cori and Congress, and everybody has compared us to Cori Bush.
Okay, good. I'm not breaking new ground here, but I mean, it's good. It's good for me to hear that she called you and was such a source of support, because we've been so impressed by her and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar speaking and sticking their necks out, particularly on this straightforward moral issue of stopping the massacre in Gaza. Now, when is your primary? When is your primary, and how can people help out your campaign?
So the primary is March 19th. We are doing canvases every single day. And if you don't live in the state or close by in the region, you can phone bank and text bank remotely. You could go to KinaCollins.com and sign up on our volunteer page. And please, like I said, we are a grassroots people-powered campaign. And so any last-minute donations would be extremely helpful. So please go to KinaCollins.com, hit the volunteer button, hit the donate button, and help us get across the finish line.
Kina Collins, I'll be rooting for you from afar, and we will put the link to your website and all of those links that you mentioned in the description of our podcast and at majority.fm, and also YouTube description. Thanks so much, Kina. I really appreciate your time today, and good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Quick break, guys, and are we going to be speaking to... all right. So, all right, we're gonna probably go into the fun half. We're trying to get in contact with. Sam has mentioned this a few times on the program. A fundraiser for a family in Gaza. We're potentially going to be speaking to a member of this family, Mohammed Al-Dagma, and we'll put this up here on the screen. Bradley's getting it together. But his family is stuck in Gaza. He is in Belgium at this point. He's been supporting his family, and he is deeply concerned about his niece, Afaf. She has Down syndrome. And they desperately need supplies. They're living down in the south of Gaza, near the Egyptian border. And they are one of the many families just living day to day trying to survive this genocide. And I know people, I think, are struggling to wonder, how can we help? How can I make a difference right now? Because my government seemingly refuses to do so. And this is one way that you can. We will put a link to this down below wherever you're listening to or watching this. They have a 60,000 euro goal, and they're a little over halfway there at this point. So if you have the ability, please take the time to look at this fundraiser on GoFundMe and try to help this family in Gaza. We will be speaking more about Gaza, and I want to do a very deep dive into the wonderful work by The Intercept, per usual. Ryan Grimm, Jeremy Scahill, and I think Daniel Boguslaw, co-authored a piece very extensively debunking, maybe not debunking, but showing how deeply negligent and propagandistic this piece was, that, on October 7th in the mass rape that was alleged in this explosive front page New York Times piece, at the time I saw that and I said, I don't have many doubts that sexual violence occurred. It was a brutal attack on October 7th, and that would not be out of the norm. But I was perplexed by the lack of real first-person accounts in this piece. I'm not going to cast aspersions on somebody making claims that they were assaulted until I get evidence really to the contrary, but it did seem suspect. And the evidence to the contrary about this piece of journalism, I say in quotes in the New York Times, is overwhelming at this point. So great job by, at the very least, the reporting is quite shoddy at the, and we'll go into the details of that in the fun half. Bradley, do you know what's happening on Left Reckoning? Bradley's going to pull that up. But in the meantime, you can go to ESVN and you can see Bradley and I ripping into Doc Rivers, which is a favorite pastime of mine, and his consistent throwing of his players under the bus and excuse making. We also spoke about the NCAA football game and EA Sports ripping off college players with a very measly sum to pay for their likeness. And we then did a little bit of a draft ranking the best Super Bowls in the 21st century, youtube.com/ESVN show. And Matt is not here with us, so Bradley will pull up Left Reckoning and tell us.
Yeah, so it's Matt and David before Matt left for the wedding that for David Griscom's wedding, actually.
I didn't know if we were supposed to reveal such a thing.
Oh well, Matt said it. Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Well, anyway, congratulations to David. I didn't know if that was like a secret, so there we go.
No, I think it's okay. They spoke to Alex Hockley of the BungaCast to discuss his review of 3 different books on the failures of the past decade of the left populism in the American Affairs Journal. So youtube.com/Left Reckoning for that, as well as patreon.com/Left Reckoning to access the post game. And also, everybody.
What? Oh! Don't forget to get out the void.
Do not forget to get out the void. I actually just purchased my own Get Out the Void t-shirt.
Why did you buy it?
Because I want to support the show.
Your employer?
I want to support my employer.
I want one for free, Sam.
I'm a huge company man.
I actually really desperately want Get Out the Void because of how stupid it is. Because of how incredibly stupid it is. How it was a throwaway inside joke that I just we'll say that on occasion. We'll say we want to make a t-shirt out of that and then we'll just forget. But the fact that Sam immediately went and got these made without really any other further discussion was just shocking to me because it's just that random and just that funny. I desperately need a Get Out the Void shirt, but also on shop.majorityreportradio.com, you can get the Majority Report Days of the Week t-shirt, which has Hump Day, Newsday Tuesday, and Majority Report. You can get a Whoopsie t-shirt, lots of fun stuff. Go to shop.majorityreportradio.com. Our merch is very fun, and you can support us in the process.
So the sale, it's $25 for the Get Out the Void t-shirt. The sale ends March 13th, and they will be delivered. They will be shipped out after the sale is over.
Thank you very much, Bradley. We don't have Brandon yet, but let's just head into the fun half since we're a little shorthanded and Matt can tell us what's happening on Doomed and Scam Economy. The number is 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what? A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black black, and the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.